People forget when the financial crisis, when Lehman was put into bankruptcy, which was put into bankruptcy, I think on the morning of September 15th in London, right? And then it cascaded down. The smartest guys in the room didn't realize that the commercial paper market, the global commercial paper market, which is the way that every company in the world gets its working capital to kind of, make payroll and to pay for the lights going on and for the janitors and for everything that's paid, the GE, the biggest companies in the world, the commercial paper market, every day you're selling commercial paper to provide working capital. When that froze up on the morning of the 15th, the whole system froze up. On that date, Sarah Palin and John McCain, I think, were up 1 point in the Gallup poll on Barack Obama. People forget, Palin came with such force out of that thing for the first 2 weeks before she started to be kind of destroyed. They were on fire. It was in that sequence of events that week, I think, talks about the corruption of our institutions. And I think it talks about how the elites are comfortable with decline. Remember, on that Thursday morning, Monday goes into bankruptcy. By Thursday, there's a crisis that nobody knows what's going on. In this commercial paper market, the whole way that the whole entire global system is financed is now frozen up. And that's when you have Bernanke and Hank Paulson, who are not alarmists, particularly not Bernanke. And he's an expert. Remember, he's an expert in the Great Depression. That's his claim to fame. That's where his PhD is in. They go to the Oval Office to go see Bush, and they have a meeting, and they tell him, hey, and we know all of this by congressional testimony later. So these are the facts. They go to him and says, hey, by 5 o'clock today, we need $1 trillion of cash infusion into the system, or the American financial system will collapse in 72 hours. The world financial system will collapse 48 hours after that, and we will have global anarchy and chaos. And Bush goes, that's interesting, but the White House counsel said, we kind of checked the Constitution. I don't really have authority to do that. You got to go over to Capitol Hill. It's kind of their problem. And so they go up to Capitol Hill. They go to Nancy Pelosi's office in the afternoon, and they have the same meeting. In fact, they got to keep their BlackBerries outside. It's so confidential, and they talk in there about they need this cash infusion. That's when Hank Paulson gets on his knees to Nancy Pelosi and makes some sort of pitch to her. The country's in literally what the Germans and the Japanese military and the Soviets, what nobody could ever do to us. Osama bin Laden. Nobody. We've now done to ourselves. We have literally caused a financial crisis that will bring down the entire system in 72 hours. The biggest revolutionaries that have gone after the United States could never dream of what we had done to ourselves. And so that began a cascade of, and here's the thing, nobody has ever been held accountable for it. Nobody's ever taken responsibility for it. And it just kind of, that's why, that we have never recovered.
Well,
we've never recovered from that catastrophe.
Somebody's been held accountable, which is probably why we have Donald Trump sitting in the White House now. It's conceivable to me, and you and I can talk about it, what happens politically among the group that become the deplorables to Hillary Clinton, the forgotten to Donald Trump.
The bang that went off on November 9th of 2016 at 2:30 in the morning was lit in the Oval Office on September 18th of 2008. It was lit right in that room. Now, because it was lit, that fuse, that long fuse that has this populist explosion, exploded later. But every financial crisis, I think, in at least modern history, is always followed by some sort of populist, right? Now, sometimes that devolves into fascism and other things, but every time there's a financial collapse of this, and remember, this is the biggest financial collapse in the country's history. This is bigger than the Great Depression. This is bigger than the one in the 1870s that caused such a big problem. This is bigger than the one that caused the Federal Reserve in the early 20th century. This is the biggest financial collapse in American history. And this was one that was not done just by simple Ponzi schemes. This was done by an organized, thought-through effort of the financial and corporate elites that knew it was going. Remember, the scams pulled off here are absolutely outrageous. And so that's why you had this immense collapse. You had so many of the elites making so much money. Then when it collapsed, they wanted the taxpayers, the whole thing of the $1 trillion. The Federal Reserve didn't call all the financial institutions together and the corporations say, hey boys, we got a problem, right? This is a problem, and we need to pass the hat. You got to cough up some cash. Yeah. That $1 trillion was from Marty Bannon.
The hit print, right?
The hit print, the hit print, but the guy's going to pay for it is the little guy.
Yeah.
We live in neo-feudalism. This is not capitalism. This is where you have a underclass, right? A lumpen proletariat almost is taken care of by the state. You have the very wealthy, and you have this kind of neo-feudalist working class and middle class in the middle that pays for everything. And the guys at the top, we've socialized the risk, that $1 trillion of infusion, right? Remember, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve on the morning of September 18th, 2008, when they're in the Oval Office talking, is $880 billion. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve on January 17th or January 20th of 2017, when Donald Trump raises his hand, is $4.5 trillion. The most progressive president in the history of our country, President Obama, saved the wealthy. And here's how they did it. They just turned on the taps of liquidity. We call it, the technical term is quantitative easing. Right. The not technical term is called bailing out the people who are guilty. Okay? So essentially, if you owned anything, you had the greatest 10-year run in history.
Wait.
Yep.
Let's move to the TARP vote and whether you think, so now all of that is happening.
You have to do TARP, the first one you have to do.
Yeah.
You know why? Your fiduciary, when a guy like Bernanke walks in and says, I need $1 trillion, right? You don't have time to debate. History's going to look at you. And he says, the American financial system is going to collapse in 72 hours, and the world financial system 2 days after that. You have global anarchy. There's not a person on earth. I don't hear these libertarians and all these, free market, let capitalism take place. Right. No. When they come in and ask for the first $1 trillion in an emergency, I believe you have to say, okay, we got to do it. I don't know what went on here, but if you're telling me this is going to save me and at least get down the road, I'll do it. But remember, that's the first $1 trillion. We kept on for another $3.5 trillion. $3.5 trillion. This is just bailing out the people that caused the problems. Got to think about it for a second. Goldman Sachs didn't lose any equity. None of the partners really missed any bonus payments. None of GE still in business. AIG, it all still exists. All the donors. Okay, the reverse side of this, remember, there is a corollary to this. It's quite powerful. And we know from the notes of the Federal Reserve, a guy named Richard Fisher, the president of the Federal Reserve of Dallas, argued this in the room constantly. He said, by doing this quantitative easing, which you're just flooding the zone with liquidity, we will save the institutions. And we will save anybody that's a big real estate holder or a hedge fund or bank. But he said, there's a huge reverse here. Number one, savings accounts, you're going to go to zero interest rates. Savings accounts are going to go to zero. So 5,000 years of the Western tradition back to the Marty Bannons, which is be a good householder. Get a wife, get a mortgage, get some kids, and you save your money. Well, now if you save money, you're a sucker because it's broken the trust. That's the trust is broken. If you save money, you're a jerk because you're not going to get any interest payment. In fact, the bank's going to charge you. So there's been you can't put money away to save into the system. Number two, the pension funds. The pension funds are going to be destroyed. Today we have a $9.5 trillion gap between the obligations of the pension funds and what we've earned off the pension funds. Why? Because it went to zero interest rates and the bonds that they can buy have no juice in them. Right? The other thing is public schools and all this. Even communities that are not leveraged can't issue bonds because there's no juice in the bonds because the negative interest rate is 1.5%. We've essentially put the burden on the bailout on the working class and middle class. That's why nobody owns anything.
Right.
But the millennials today are nothing but 19th century Russian serfs. They're better fed, they're better clothed, they're in better shape, they have more information than anybody in the world at any point in time. But they don't own anything. They're not going to own anything, okay? And they're 20%. If you mark in time against their parents, they're 20% behind in their income, and there's no pension plan in the future. They're all gig economy. We've literally destroyed the middle class in this country.
Okay.
And both political parties. By the way, this is not about Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
This is the way the system works, and this is the way the system comes together to protect itself and to move itself forward. Okay? And so because nobody understands even the rudimentaries of finance, right? And they keep the public kind of economically illiterate, right? This allows to go on, and now we're in that crisis. What Trump understood.
Wait, don't go to Trump yet.
Okay.
So we've created this world of unhappy people. The middle class is shrinking and destroyed in lots of ways. We're going to catch back up with it in a minute.
Okay.